Hey everyone, so I thought I would do this new thing where I react to videos and kind of analyze them while I'm playing them for you on screen. This video was halfway done because I was in the middle of recording and I didn't like it, so I decided to start over. But this video, Does an Avoidant Want You to Chase, came up in my feed. I didn't even search for it, and I immediately clicked on it because this is something I asked myself a lot last year when I was in a relationship with an avoidant. And as somebody who's had that experience, I wanted to talk about that in this video and kind of respond to some of the things he says, because I think this YouTuber gives a lot of really good information in this short video, but some very bad advice at the end. Anyways, so this is John O'Brien. I've never seen any of his other videos before, but he doesn't even have 1,000 subscribers, so please subscribe to him. I have no idea.
Need some.
I have no idea if he's a controversial person or not, but just give this small account more subscribers. And without further ado, let's watch the video and see what exactly it means when an avoidant wants you to chase them, or does an avoidant want you to chase them.
If you're in a relationship with an avoidant and you feel them pulling away, you might be wondering, do they want to be chased? Well, stick around, because in this video, I'm going to give you both the simple answer and the long answer. If you're new to attachment theory, there's 4 main attachment styles that we cover. There is only one secure attachment style, and that is the secure attachment style. The rest of them are insecure. The anxious preoccupied is preoccupied with a relationship or the idea of a relationship. The dismissive avoidant fears closeness and intimacy. They crave these things, but they also fear them. And the fearful avoidant is a mix of both. They're both anxious and avoidant. That's why they're the disorganized attachment style.
So, historically, I have always been the anxious, preoccupied attachment style. I've been afraid of abandonment, so as a result, I would be more overbearing, more controlling, more possessive of my friends, because I was afraid of them leaving me. As I got older, I recognized these negative behaviors. I was also in a relationship with somebody else who displayed some of these toxic behaviors that I had the impulse to do. So I resolved to, not act like that. And as a result, I would say by the time I was 18, I kind of had most of my anxious tendencies under control for the most part. But as a result of the trauma from my last relationship, I've become a bit more of the fearful avoidant, having a blend of anxious attachment and dismissive avoidant style.
Now, we're going to be talking about when the avoidant pulls away. Now, both the dismissive avoidant and the fearful avoidant tend to pull away in relationships. And if
So I watched another video that said it's very common for people with avoidant attachment style to connect with people with anxious attachment style more than dismissive avoidance and fearful avoidance. And that's just a recipe for disaster, because both of them are responding to the fear of being left or alone or abandoned. They respond in polar opposite ways that clash with each other. The anxious will become more overbearing, will demand more attention and more verbal reassurance from somebody they care about if they're becoming more and more afraid of being abandoned. Whereas the avoidant will just distance himself more and more. So it creates a feedback loop. The overbearing nature of the anxious attachment is going to scare the avoidant away, and the avoidant distancing himself from the anxious attached person is going to cause the anxious person to feel more abandoned and more unloved.
these two are paired together, it's usually going to be the dismissive avoidant who pulls away.
Definitely.
So when the avoidant pulls away, question is, do they secretly want to be chased?
No.
Do they secretly want you to chase them? The simple answer is no. No, they don't want to be chased. So if they pull away, you should pull away too. Now, you can give them some reassurance without pressure. Someone with a secure attachment style might say something like, hey, listen, I noticed the distance between us. I'm going to give you some space, but I'll be here when you're ready to talk.
Me when I pretend I'm not insecure.
So that's a simple statement of reassurance without pressure, and a secure person might say that. So you can say that if you think it's appropriate for your relationship. But no, they don't want to be chased, so you should not chase them down. And if you have an anxious attachment style,
as I mentioned, yes, chasing them down will make it worse, because another element of being avoidant is while you crave intimacy and connection, you also really value your independence. You feel more secure, independent than connected to other people. So if you find that somebody is threatening your independence by trying to push for a deeper relationship or push for you to stay in contact, that's just going to scare an avoidant away more. Do not do this.
Style, that can be hard because your impulse is to chase, your impulse is to over pursue. So you're really gonna need some self-awareness to keep yourself in check, keep those tendencies in check.
I used to be more like this. I used to be a chaser, if you will. But by the time I was 18, I knew better than to do this. And we'll talk in a second, actually, about why I did the right thing, but somehow the avoidant in my life thought I didn't do the right thing. Remind me when I get to the end, because I will forget.
So yes, the simple answer is no. No, when they pull away, they don't want to be chased. Now, here's the long answer, okay? Again, the question is, when the avoidant pulls away, do they secretly want you to chase them? We know the simple answer is no. Here's the long answer. The long answer is eventually. So let me explain that. Now, first of all, avoidants are not bad people, right? They don't have ill intent the way a narcissist does.
Before I was in a relationship with an avoidant, I was in a relationship with a narcissist. So I've seen all the red flags. If you ever have questions about red flags, trust me, I have seen every single one. And with the narcissist, she had more of an anxious attachment style, so she would constantly send me messages all the time. She needed verbal reassurance from me that I loved her multiple times a day, maybe even every 5 minutes, and I was happy to give that to her, but it became very, very overwhelming because it felt like nothing I did was ever enough. And she was constantly in distress, so I wondered if I was the bad guy, especially because I was quite a bit older than her, considering our two ages at the time. And I thought, I wondered if there was some way I could prove my love to her even more, but there wasn't, because I was already spending every waking moment making drawings for her, making little edits of us for her, spending time with her, video calling her, trying to shower her with attention, so she was reminded that I cared about her. But it was never enough, and she would intentionally give me the silent treatment, so I would chase after her. I would apologize for things I didn't even do. I would comfort her if she was feeling sad. She would strategically manipulate me, because she lived in a fantasy world where everything revolved around her and everybody had to think about her all the time. So by the time I got out of a relationship with her, I learned not to chase after people. So when I eventually ended up in a relationship with an avoidant, I realized, okay, well, if somebody's pushing away from me or giving me the silent treatment, I shouldn't stoop low enough to chase after them. I shouldn't be their little lapdog. I should not cave into this game that they're playing with me. But again, with the narcissist, it was definitely more strategic and intentional, and with the avoidant, it was very emotion-driven. It was selfish nonetheless. It was, I'll talk more about this in a minute, it was very selfish and cruel and immature, but it's not the same level of malice and intention the way a narcissist plays the game.
Now, I'm not saying I agree with all of.
Also, my question to this guy, and I don't have an answer myself, but my question to this guy is, are narcissists bad people? Because is it a personality disorder that comes from trauma where these people are just misunderstood? I see a lot of new content from that of, narcissists are misunderstood as a condition they can't control, but I have never met a narcissist who didn't strike me as a horrible person. But anyways, I don't know, just food for thought. Do you think all narcissists are bad people?
The behaviors of an avoidant, but they process emotions differently from an anxious attachment style, from a secure attachment style. So avoidants crave intimacy and closeness just like everybody else, but at the same time, they fear these things. So it's like a
This explains why my ex constantly complains about being single despite pushing everybody away from him.
constant battle. Okay, they want intimacy, they want closeness, but they also fear intimacy. They also fear closeness. So it's a constant struggle between the two, between fearing something and craving something at the same time. Now, why would they fear intimacy? Why would they fear closeness if they also crave these things? Well, it all stems, there is an underlying fear of abandonment. It all stems down to the fear of abandonment.
So, in the case of my ex, I don't have a lot of experience with avoidance. I really try to limit my relationships to just one narcissist and just one avoidant, and I have an opening with a histrionic at 12 tomorrow. That's a joke. But for my ex, based on everything he's told me, it wasn't really a fear of abandonment. It was more a fear of failure. And that he was eventually going to fail this person, so it was kind of an act of self-sabotage to just push them away before he can disappoint them or harm them in some way, which still hurts them as it is. And I do think that being avoidant and pushing people away in the way that avoidants tend to do is selfish and damaging, and they need therapy for this. But I would say, in the case of my ex, it wasn't really a fear of abandonment, or if it was way more layered than this.
Now, there's a misconception that fear of abandonment is exclusive to the anxious, preoccupied. But the truth is, all of these insecure attachment styles have a fear of abandonment. They just handle it differently. The way an avoidant is going to handle fear of abandonment is they see the possibility of abandonment as a threat, and they want to keep their distance from that threat. So they respond by pulling away. So they pull away because a fear is being triggered. Fear of intimacy, fear of closeness, and underneath those fears is the underlying fear of abandonment. That's why the avoidant pulls away, because those fears are being triggered one after the other. So when they pull away, they need time and space for those fears to settle. Now, depending on the specific circumstances of the relationship, this can take a few days, it can take a few months. It's going to be different for every relationship, right? Was it a subtle pull away? Did they subtly pull away? Or was there a big breakup, a big argument, a big conflict? It's going to be different for every relationship. But the point is, they need time and space for those fears to settle, okay? They need time on their own to process their emotions. So you cannot chase them down when their fears are being activated, right? Right now, they're overwhelmed. During this period, they're overwhelmed with emotion. So this is where you need to take a step back, come back to yourself, and give them time and space for those fears to settle. Now, what's going to happen is, during this period where they have time, you leave them alone, you don't contact them, and they have this time and space for themselves to let their fears settle. What's going to happen is, over time, once those fears are settled, then they're going to start to notice your absence. And if the feelings are still there, again, different for every relationship, but if the feelings are still there for you, for the relationship, especially if it was a serious relationship, then the avoidant will start to miss you.
Don't get in a serious, long-term romantic relationship with an avoidant who has not learned to control their impulses.
Right? But they'll be hesitant to reach out, because reaching out requires them to be vulnerable.
Yes, they're going to break up with you and then expect you to reach out to them. Right, the self-respect, loving it.
And they don't like to be vulnerable. So this is the part where they kind of want you to pursue them. They kind of want you to chase them, right? They kind of want you to reach out, because now they've had enough time, their fears are settled, and now they're starting to miss you. They're starting to miss that attention and affection that you were showing them, and now they're ready to receive it, because now they've had time to recharge, right? They're recharged.
Okay, this was what I was going to say before. If being in a relationship drains your social battery, and you need space away from your partner in order to recharge, you should not be in a relationship. This is not okay.
Their fears are settled. They're good now. Now they're ready to receive your attention, your affection. This is the part.
Okay, I just want to say here, they're not good now. They're not ready to receive your attention and affection. This is a misconception. They may, if you end up getting your avoidant back, they will eventually distance themselves from you again, unless they have gotten therapy and fixed their fear of failure or fear of abandonment, and they no longer push you away or make you feel bad or deprive you of affection. That's another thing avoidants do. They deprive you of affection. They sort of siphon the affection you receive from them. They're not going to be good if you let them go and then bring them back after a few months. They will do this again, and probably more frequently now, knowing they can get away with it and knowing they can always come back to you. The fear has not been perfectly addressed. They're not fixed by this. This is a behavioral pattern that they're going to continue until they get serious help to fix these harmful patterns.
Where they kind of want you to chase them, right? And over time, right, they may miss you even more. So this is the part where, if you think it's appropriate for the circumstances for the relationship, you can kind of reach out to them. You can kind of reconnect to them accordingly. You can kind of chase them, right? So it's going to be different for every relationship, how you go about doing that. Whether you call them, message them, but reconnect accordingly if you want, if it's appropriate, if there is still something there for the relationship. Now, if it was this big breakup, this big dramatic breakup, then you probably just want to get yourself to a point where you no longer care about this question of whether...
I think regardless of if it was a huge explosive breakup or a slow burn, you need to distance yourself from an ex like this. There's no reason to rekindle a relationship with somebody who's going to keep leaving you because of their own insecurity.
Or not, they want you to chase them, right? Or you could just leave it alone and just let them come to you if they want. Meanwhile, you're focused on yourself and you're focused on your own life, right? So that's the long answer. So I hope that clears things up, and I hope I brought some good into your life today. If so, please like and subscribe, and please continue to share your stories. Have you ever had an experience like this, right? Particularly if you're an avoidant, share your experiences after enough time, after enough space, after you've had time for your emotions to process. Did you kind of want your partner to kind of chase you again, to reach out to you?
Okay, so I'll be sharing my story as a former anxious attached who was in a relationship with an avoidant. Oh, I didn't realize how delayed it was. I'm sorry. I'm going to make myself big now. So all you can do is see my gorgeous, handsome face. By the way, that picture is not me. Wait, no. That picture's not me. I drew a random girl from Pinterest, and I intend to do something like that again until my bed is full. My bed is really messy right now. I apologize. I kind of don't care. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience. First of all, I'm glad I didn't watch this video a year ago because exactly 1 year ago, give or take a few days, my ex and I broke up early September of 2023. And I'm glad I didn't see this video because my vulnerable 19-year-old self would feel like it was up to me to psychologically figure out my 35-year-old ex and try to figure out how to, give him space and get him to come back to me and try to establish a relationship again, etc., etc. I'm glad I didn't do that. I'm glad I distanced myself and at least resolved never to go back to him again. Sorry, my hair is really annoying. Okay. I've talked at length about my 8-month-long saga with him in 2023, where for 4 months we flirted, for 2 months we were officially in a relationship, for 2 months we were unofficially in a relationship. Namely, he officially broke up with me, but unofficially stated that we were still sort of dating. And then he broke up with me, and then I cut off contact with him because, again, with that siphoning of affection going on, I didn't even want to be in communication with this person. He wasn't acting like the same person I'd met from the beginning. But I didn't talk much about the 6-month-long saga that's been going on in 2024, where we got back in contact and have been communicating. And it's pretty premature for me to talk about something like this. It's sort of like talking about a breakup before a breakup has even happened. I am in communication with him. It's not like, oh yeah, so eventually I reached out to him and this is what happened. But I will talk about the process of getting back in contact with him and how that perfectly matches what this YouTuber said about avoidance and chasing avoidance. So I got back into contact with him early February 2024, and I met him in a Discord server, which I think that's pretty embarrassing, but I'm pretty sure everybody already knows that by now. And after he broke up with me, I left the Discord server that we were in because I didn't want to be anywhere near him at all anymore. And I had a friend who was closer to my age from that Discord server, and she kept begging me to return to the server. She kept insisting, oh, he's no longer as active as he used to be. Please, can you please just rejoin? The server's not the same without you. So eventually I was like, okay, fine, I'll return. And guess who was the first person to greet me and then promptly become a lot more active when I returned to the server? My ex. Now, as for getting back in contact, who got in contact with whom? I would say, on the record, I got back into contact with him. Off the record, he did things to provoke me to start talking to him again, and he was the one to initiate voice calling again. Well, sort of. I technically was the one to say, can we voice call, but he was the one to say, can we start doing this stuff again? Anyways, so now the story actually starts a little bit before that. I rejoined the server in February, but in January there was an internet forum that I have talked about, so I'm not going to talk about it again, but we are both part of an internet forum, and I posted on this internet forum after not posting for months. So I wasn't in the server. He couldn't really, well, he could directly message me if he wanted in other ways, but he couldn't really message me on Discord. But he could see my post on this internet forum. And a few days later, I noticed a new notification, and it was that he had liked my post. He didn't like the post before mine, he didn't like the post after mine, he only liked my post, and nobody else had liked my post either, and it was just a very brain-dead, low-effort, minimal response. So it didn't really warrant any likes at all. That's why nobody else had liked it, but only he had. And at the time, you know, I'm an anxious, attached person. I overthought it. I was like, what does this mean? Is he trying to get me in contact with him again? What does it mean? And I talked to my friend about it, who's the girl who tried to get me to join the server, and she said, oh, you're overthinking it. He probably just thought it was a good post. And I thought, well, you didn't like the post. It wasn't a good post. It said nothing. It was a very brain-dead nothing burger. But months later, after I had already been calling him again regularly at this point, he mentioned that he was excited that I had joined the server again. When he saw me again in the server, he was excited that I had rejoined. And I forgot if he mentioned it or if I mentioned it, but the topic of the infamous liked post back in January before I rejoined the server was mentioned. And I said, I noticed that, and I thought, you liked that post because it was my post. You were trying to get my attention. And he said yes. So when I overthought it before, wondering if he was trying to get my attention, I was right. He was trying to get my attention. And he said, I thought that if you saw the notification, you would maybe come back. And by that he meant return to the server, not come back to him. Actually, when I did return to the server, he began kind of teasing me and picking on me, even though he's a lot older than me, and I think that, you know, if you're in your mid-30s, you should get a life and not pick on teenagers, because that's kind of pathetic. I am also speaking to other people in the server as well who do the same thing, because I'm very low-hanging fruit. But he began picking on me, and eventually I caved, and I talked to him, and I said, are you mad at me for rejoining? And he said, no, why would you think that? And I said, because you're picking on me. And he said, oh, I was just trying to be funny. And I said, well, I don't find it funny, it hurts my feelings. And he said, sorry. A few days later, some girls and I were talking about some movies in this server. So this guy's a straight man, and we were talking about movies with lesbian relationships. He technically has no logical reason to want to watch them, but some girls and I were talking about some movies with lesbian relationships, and I suggested one movie, and the other girl suggested a myriad of movies. And a day later, he pops into the server and announces, oh, I watched that movie that she suggested, and it was really good. And I thought, okay, it's kind of weird that you're watching my movie out of all the movies that have nothing to do with you, but okay. And then I asked him for a link to this movie, because this movie I had suggested, I hadn't watched it myself. But I asked him to send me a file to this video, because that was something we used to do together. He would send me files to videos, and we would watch them together. And he sent me the file, and we talked a little bit about our shared taste in movies, and then he said kind of randomly and bitterly the only thing we had in common. Our shared taste in movies, I guess. And I thought that was weird and a little bit reminder of we parted on poor terms, and he was reminded that, yeah, it didn't work out because we have nothing in common at all, which wasn't really true. It was just like sort of a bitter way to kind of let it all go and all that. But anyways, I decided to leave him alone for a few weeks, and eventually he messaged me out of nowhere saying, hey, did you finish that show that we started watching last year? And I said no, and he said, do you want to start watching it again? And I didn't hesitate at all before saying yes, of course. And we proceeded to begin calling on a somewhat regular basis. The longest we've gone without calling since then is maybe 2 weeks, but we've been calling as frequently as 3 times a week, but usually 2 times. Anyways. Now, we have talked at length about our past relationship. In fact, we seem to bring it up almost every single time we call, and if you factor in the fact that we talk twice a week, that's a lot of times to bring up our past relationship for two people who are supposed to have moved on by this point. And we talked a little bit about how it ended. So I reminded him of that I told him that I was going to be starting a new relationship, or I wanted to start a new relationship with a girl nearby, but she told me herself that she had an avoidant attachment style, and I was like, oh boy, well, I know how to navigate this, I've done it before. And my ex said, you need to push her more, you need to be more clear about what you want. And I said, no, that's a terrible idea, that's only going to push her away more. And then I also added, she's an avoidant just like you, and I don't want to scare her away the same way I scared you away. And then he said, wasn't it the other way around, didn't I scare you away? And I said, well, I reminded him of exactly what happened, how he was the one to break up with me, and I was the one to eventually distance myself, because I didn't need that toxic energy in my life. But one of the reasons I also stopped being friends with him, was because he was being a lot meaner to me when we would talk, and when we began talking again, he was a lot nicer to me, and has only just increasingly got nicer to me. But anyways, so we talked about, like, the breakup, and we remembered how I was the one to cut him out, and he said I didn't give him an opportunity to protest, or, to change my mind. And I said, you wouldn't have done that anyway. And he said, yeah, it seemed like you had already made up your mind. And I thought, okay, yeah, but that's because of, I thought about it for months, and your behavior for the past few months proved to me that it would be a good idea to cut you out of my life. It would be very beneficial to my mental and emotional health. He seemed to, be annoyed that I, didn't give him more chances or something, or that I didn't fight harder. When he told me he didn't have feelings for me anymore, he asked more recently, but you didn't ask why. I didn't ask why. I didn't ask why he no longer had feelings for me. If somebody's gonna break up with me and says, I don't have feelings for you anymore, why is it my job to ask why? Why is it my job to convince them, oh, I know you just broke up with me, but actually don't break up with me, I'll do better. The things you have a problem with me, I'll just stop doing them. And if we want to talk about how my behavior as an anxious attached person factored into this relationship, I would say I went into this relationship being aware I get attached to people very, very easily. No longer as easily, but when I do, it's very intense. But I got attached to people very easily, and I wanted to check my behavior to not scare people away. So with my relationship with my ex-girlfriend, I knew, remember how this YouTuber said that avoidants are not bad people? And I countered, they might not be bad people, because we're all bad people, for we all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, Romans 3:23. But avoidants are very selfish and immature. And I think if you're in your mid-30s and you still haven't figured out how to control your avoidant tendencies while being self-aware of them, there's a problem. But I would say it's very selfish to take out your avoidant tendencies on your partner, because what you're literally doing is depriving them of affection, siphoning the affection and attention you give them. And that can be emotionally abusive depending on how you want to look at it. Similarly, if you're an anxiously attached person, you can also be really selfish by becoming controlling and possessive, or your constant demands for approval and affection can also come across as toxic, because you're making your partner believe that nothing they ever do is good enough, that they can never be good enough for you, that they can never reassure you or assure you of their love for you. And that's also toxic for that person. That's why my relationship with a narcissist didn't work out. Now, I put in a lot of effort to not take out my insecurity and anxiety on my ex, but I will say that he did push me to not necessarily be, well, he did push me to be more anxious by constantly changing his mind about our relationship on a day-to-day basis. Oh my goodness. I silenced all my WhatsApp friends, and the only person I didn't silence is the one who's messaging me now. But as I was saying, my relationship, with the avoidant, he tried to encourage me to be more open about my feelings and express myself more, in the sense that any insecurities I had, he wanted me to voice them, even though most of my securities, I was aware that they were irrational, that needed constant approval and reassurance of his affection because of my own anxiety, not because he didn't actually care about me. And what he did was actually betray my trust severely, because when he wasn't in constant contact with me, I thought, okay, I'll just trust that he still cares about me, even if he's not saying it all the time. And that gave him time to just drift away from me. And that created more of a, now kind of an anxious, avoidant style of relationships now, because I'm sort of afraid of being vulnerable with people again, because I don't want them to betray me like this when they see how anxious I can be. But yeah, it sounded almost as if he wanted me to fight for the relationship, and he wanted me to get back in contact with him, and he'll constantly complain about women not being patient, or why can't women be more patient for guys who can't pick up on clues, or guys who keep self-sabotaging. No, when you self-sabotage and we leave you, we are not fulfilling your prophecy. We are removing ourselves from a situation that is toxic and detrimental to our own mental health. So yeah, also, no, I think that's all that needs to be said. I hope you learned a lot from this video. If you have an avoidant ex, or if somebody in your life is avoidant, and instead of getting help, instead of communicating how they feel and their anxieties, they just distance themselves from you and are a total jerk, do not chase after them. There are so many people in the world with secure attachment styles. There are so many people in the world who wonder, why does it seem like nobody's ready for a relationship? So many people. You will find somebody, I promise.